Hey Levi, so look, I'm gonna try to run through with you and try not to make this video super long because it won't load. Okay, so what I do, this would be the equivalent of your foam skull, and this is just really a life cast of me. And it's the same principle. You have molded your clay over your foam skull, your life cast, front and back and everything. I usually try to bring my clay down a little bit here so I can cover it, or it kind of goes down past my shirt line a little bit. But so this is the equivalent. You would just sculpt over this to what I want, and then once I have my clay and my sculpt right, what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll take just a clear enamel or just something to seal my clay with. And it doesn't matter really the brand to me. It's just, and I'll take this and I'll spray the whole sculpt. Spray it real good. And I'll usually put a few coats on it, spray the whole thing, all of my clay. And what that does is it seals my clay off. And I let that dry. And then once I get those three coats, and then the big thing about making a mold, and you can watch videos because all molds are pretty much made the same way, just the chemicals are different that they use, whether it's silicone or fiberglass or whatever. But mold lines are always the same no matter what. So I've just kind of got a mold right here to show you. If I can break it loose. Okay. This is, you can see where I built up a clay wall, basically, and I usually make my clay walls about, I don't know, inch and a half thick. And what I'll do when I build my clay wall, let me see if I can do this. Hang on, let me lay this down. I'll kind of lay it down if I can and put something under the back of the head, like some soft clay or something, so it doesn't dent. And I'll build a clay wall around here that comes out about that far or so, all the way around to where I want my seam line, because I have to be able to break my mold apart, and you have to be careful with undercuts and stuff like that. You can watch a lot of videos on where to make mold lines and all that type of stuff, like Stan Winston and all that. Let me set this back up real quick. So that's why you see the rim here. That's a clay wall, and I'll make a sculpt, or I'll make the mold of the front half, and then I'll trim the extra hairs off, and then I'll spin the sculpt around, and then I'll make a mold of the back half. And before I pull the mold apart, I'll go ahead and drill my holes. I actually put some little keys in it right here, and I pull it apart and clean it all out, and then I can put the mold back together. So all that is mold lines, and you should be able to look up how to just make a mold, where mold lines go on a mold, and try to research undercuts. So anyways, let's get back to this. So basically what I'll do, once my clay sculpted and I'm ready to mold, I'll seal my clay off. Now I use a wet clay or a pottery clay. I don't really know what kind of clay you're using. Seal it off with a clear coat. Let that dry. I'll build my clay wall up wherever I want my seam on my sculpt. Okay? And once I have that up, all right, what I'll do is I'll spray it again. Now, mind you, when you build a clay wall up, you don't want any gaps in between your sculpt and your wall. You want to take like some kind of thing and just kind of smooth it out, because you don't want chemicals to go through your wall. So you want to make sure that wall is nice and tight along your sculpt, okay? So we'll put the clay wall up. We'll now spray the clay wall. We'll give that clay wall 3 coats. So now you have the whole front of this thing and the back, but that'll be sprayed with a clear coat, sealing off the clay. Now I go to a release agent, and this is what I have used since my very first mold, and I've had this jar or this gallon for a long time, man. And you can look at the name on it, you can probably Google it, and what it is just a release agent. It's got alcohol in it or whatever. And I use chip brushes on all mine, and what I'll do is I'll pour this in a cup and I'll brush 3 coats. I'll brush a coat, let it dry. I might even take a heat gun with my clay and just kind of let it fire off to kind of dry a little bit. Brush another coat of the Port-All release agent, and then brush another coat. So 3 coats of this just on the front half. Okay? Not even worried about the back half of the mold yet. Now, once this dries, I want to come in and I use the old school way of making molds. I know a lot of the guys are pouring silicone molds and stuff today, and that's great. It's just not something that I have experience in. I use gel coat, and this is the same way that they kind of do boat holes when like boats. And this is the no wax or whatever. And this stuff is really, really strong. And I think I pay about $65 for a gallon of this. And this stuff lasts for a long time. I can get a lot of molds out of this. So what I'll do is I'll pour my gel coat, and it actually comes with a MEKP hardener. So it's a two-part. You'd pour this, and you pour so many drops to ever how much of this you're pouring. And there's charts for that. Usually it'll come with a chart. Mix it up. I'm going to brush a coat on my clay wall and all my front of my sculpt. Brush it all up. I'm going to let that sit until it gets tacky to the touch, where I can push it. All right, it doesn't want to be runny or anything like that. If it's real, real wet, I want to wait. But it should be just be tacky to the touch. And when it gets tacky to the touch, I'm going to brush another coat of the same stuff. Again, we're going to do 3 coats of this. Wait till each coat tacks up before I brush the next coat. So 3 coats. And when the 3rd coat of my gel coat gets tacky, once again, just on the front and on the clay wall and all in front of my sculpt, I come in and I use a fiberglass Bondo. You can buy this stuff at Walmart. I'm in the gallon or jugs like this. Once you start with the mold between here to here, I usually don't stop. I usually spend an entire evening, a few hours, making sure that the entire front of part of that is done. I don't want to stop in the process here, right? So I've got my 3 coats on. They're tacked up. It's ready to go to do my fiberglass mold. I buy this stuff right here. You can get it at a hardware store, automotive store, Walmart, wherever. And this also has a hardener with it as well. Each can comes with a hardener. Same thing. Ever how many milliliters or whatever you're using of this, you pour so many drops and you mix it up. Now, I use what you call a fiberglass mesh. Okay, you can also get some of this at some of the auto parts stores, wherever you find this. I just happen to buy a big quantity on eBay. Now, this is you can tell there's 2 different kinds of fiberglass. This is this like, it's not really a mesh. It's almost like a mat, I guess you could say. That's why I'm kind of showing you the texture of it. And what I'll do is I'll take and I'll tear off pieces. You just tear it off. You don't have to cut it. It just tears apart. So you get a lot of pieces like this. Okay? So now I've got my fiberglass mixed up. My resin mixed up, and I've got a bunch of pieces like this. And what I'll do is I'll take my brush, dip it in some fiberglass. I'll start wherever, because you're going to fiberglass the whole front of this wall and the whole front of the mask. And I just brush some fiberglass resin on there. Take a piece of my fiberglass mat, stick it on there, and it's going to stick in there. And just put a little bit more on it, tap it in there. I usually take my brush and just tap it in there. And I'll take these pieces. You don't want to get them too big. You want to get them small enough to where they'll fit into the contours of your sculpt, right? If you do big pieces, they just don't want to bend and conform. So I tear little pieces out like this, and I just go over the whole front of the thing with this mesh and my fiberglass resin, the entire wall and the entire front of the mask. And I'm going to do 3 coats of that as well. You do not have to wait for this stuff to tack up or harden or set to move on to your 2nd and 3rd coats. Once you start with this, you can just keep on moving, man. Mix you some more resin. It can be sopping wet. Make sure you get good coverage everywhere with your fiberglass mat overlapping and everything else, okay? So now, I usually let that set overnight. When I come in, the whole front and my wall will be cured, okay? Now, what I'll do, because I'm going to have hairs hanging over the edge of my wall, I'll take a Dremel and I'll trim that out smooth like you see here, okay? Just like you see there. You don't... Now, once that's done, I'm going to spin the sculpt around. Now, mind you, the whole front is now cured and the clay wall is cured. So now I come around here to the back side of my sculpt. Once I've got my wall trimmed out and all the fiberglass nice and smooth, I'll brush this off and clean it. If there's any things I need to repair, I'll go ahead and repair it now. Now, I'll redo the entire process on the back. For a good measure, even though I've already sealed it, I'll go ahead and seal it again and seal the back side of that clay wall. Real good. Make sure there's no gaps in between the wall and the sculpt. Everything's nice and tight. If there are little gaps, I'll take some clay and just kind of fill it in. Make sure nothing's going to seep under because that's not what we want. And I'm going to redo the process. I'll seal it. Make sure the wall is sealed. Port it, release agent, 3 coats, wall and whole back of the sculpt. Gel coat, which is a polyester gel coat if you go to look for this, okay? 3 coats of that. Make sure each coat tacks up before you put the next coat on. The last 3rd coat is tacked up. Mix your resin and start fiberglassing the back side of this, okay? Now, you want to make sure you get all your clay wall and everything. All right, that's going to be part of your mold. So now, once all that's cured, I'll come in the next day before I want to pull the mold apart, and I'll go ahead and drill my holes in my wall, my fiberglass wall for my bolts, and I'll go ahead and trim it one more time because now the backside is going to have fiberglass hairs hanging all over the damn place, and I'll trim it all smooth. And very easily, I'll take a couple flathead screwdrivers or a chisel or something, and I'll just kind of take my time and ease that mold apart. Now, once that mold is apart, you're going to have 2 pieces, just like this, front and the back, okay? And you're going to have to clean all that shit out of there, all that clay out of there. And sometimes I have to take a little toothbrush or something and run it under some hot water and just get it real nice and clean all the clay out. Once all that clay's out, you now have a 2-part mold you can put together and bolt together. And once you get to that point, now you can brush your silicone in, and I can show you from there because the video is getting kind of long, and how to do the undersculpt. But that's how I make my molds, man. and a lot of people, I don't even know if they're doing it this way anymore, but this is the way that I've used mine on every one that I've done. Whether it was my Palpatine, which is kind of not that great. I'm not that great of a sculptor, man, by any means. My Chewbacca, my Nikto was made that way. My Aqualish was made that way. This is the one I'm working on now, was made that way. And also, my Chewbacca was made that way. And it's just the way that I know how to do it, man. I know that you're getting a lot of information from different people, and I can't really comment because I don't have experience on doing molds any other way. But these are the materials that I use. Clear coat, your Port release agent, polyester gel coat. Both of these you can get off eBay. And then just a Bondo resin and fiberglass mat, I think is what it is. It's the chewed up. They have a mesh that's real nice and neat and wavy. I don't use that. I use this because it can really get into the cracks and crevices and all that and pick up the contours of the sculpt. So look at this, man. Tell me what you think. And if you want to move on from there, man, and you decide to go that route, I can show you how to do the underskull.